Hey everybody, this is Ernst. I'm in Fernandina Beach, Florida, and I am here to welcome the now Trinidad, which is part of the Armada Museum that is floating around the world in celebration of Christopher Columbus's first journey. I saw this boat here last year, and it was really compelling. I don't understand. I'm probably people aren't exactly thrilled to learn about some of the indigenous studies that I've been focused on lately, but I figured that this boat would be a great opportunity to raise awareness about the doctrine of discovery and how it relates to indigenous peoples here on Turtle Island, which is the indigenous name for North America. In 1492, this boat sailed the ocean blue. I don't know if the ocean was blue before it sailed, but they sailed and on their way to India, and they stumbled upon our little continent. They thought they found India, which is, I think, why they call us Indians. And people, I don't think, fully understand the impact and the implications that this ship had on not just this land, but also our federal Indian law. What people don't know is that there's a thing called the doctrine of discovery, and essentially what it says in it's enshrined in our Supreme Court. It says that this land was discovered, and because this land was discovered, that the European monarchs who discovered it assumed the title of the land. Now, this happened 530 years ago, so some people might think, like, what does it have to do with today? Well, that event was codified into our federal law books. In 1823, there's a Supreme Court case called Johnson versus McIntosh, where two non-Indians were arguing over who gets the title to the land. Someone bought the land from a non-Indian, and then another person bought the land from an Indian, and so they wanted to ask the government who owned the title to the land. And in 1823, Chief Justice John Marshall said that the doctrine of discovery, because my ancestors were heathens, infidels, and what they presumed to be enemies of the cross, that gave the European Christian monarchs the supreme right to discover this land. Now, it's important to know that it is impossible to discover land when tens of millions of other peoples are already inhabiting it. It's impossible to discover land without dehumanizing people first, because if there are tens of millions of other peoples that are living somewhere that God created there, to discover it is to essentially dehumanize it. If there's otherwise it would be called theft, right? So 1823, Johnson versus McIntosh, doctrine of discovery, which said that any lands that are occupied by non-Christians, what they said, the words they used to describe my ancestors were heathens, infidels, pagans, and enemies of the cross. So quite literally, because my ancestors were not baptized at the time of first contact, that gave the Christian European monarchs the supreme right to assume title to this land, which is misguided. And so even today, here in the 21st century, my tribe, for instance, and countless other Native American tribes cannot hold title to our land. We control about 5% of the land in this country, and that 5% of treaty land is held in what's called a trust. The Native Americans are not the exclusive title holders. It's held in a trust with the United States government. And the reason that we cannot own the title to our land or hold exclusive title to our land is because our ancestors were savages. Because our federal law system here in the United States says that discovery goes to the supreme sovereign, which was the European Christian monarchs. So I think it's important to just focus on that and to think about that and how the laws of this country impact and the implications that they have on our peoples. Some people think that the doctrine of discovery was a long time ago, was 1823, and it doesn't have any kind of teeth today. The doctrine of discovery was actually relitigated in the Supreme Court in 1901. That was Hitchcock versus Lone Wolf versus Hitchcock. And then the doctrine of discovery was relitigated, reinforced in 1954. That was Teton Nation versus United States. And then this is the kicker. In 2005, Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote that in the Oneida Nation versus New York, Oneida Nation versus City of Sherrill of New York, Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote in the first footnote of her majority opinion that fee title to the land goes to, fee title at the time colonists arrived in America, I'm trying to quote it, was vested in the sovereign, first the discovering European nation, then the original states, and then the United States. So that is Ruth Bader Ginsburg in 2005 reinforcing the doctrine of discovery. Again, if my ancestors would have been baptized, if my ancestors would have been under some other Christian domination, then they would not be in a position where another invading nation could claim discovery. And so, yeah, I am just really felt compelled to come out here and try to at least speak up for my peoples and for my nations. And I'm not angry. I'm glad that they're here. I'm grateful that they would come here, and I'm grateful for all the people who are celebrating this time and celebrating this month. But it's I think it's also important to realize that historical events still have implications on people that are living today. And the discovery doctrine, which is enshrined in our federal Indian law system, is the law of this land. You can't discover land that's already inhabited by tens of millions of other people, and you can't discover land unless you dehumanize them first. If somebody was to go to your property with a book and a gun, and they knock on your door and say that they discovered your house and discovered your property, and then you have to leave, at least here in the state of Florida, the person doing that would probably be met with a shotgun of some sort. You can't just go up to someone's property and claim discovery. However, that is the precise argument of the United States government. In 2005, they argued in an appellate court, federal court in 2020 and in 2021. So even today, the United States of America is arguing in the highest court of the land that this land can be discovered. And you can discover it, but you're going to have to nullify the existence of tens of millions of other people in order to make that happen first. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and holiday season. And happy Thanksgiving, and Wanishi.